Oh, how was your day? How's the day
Everything's
going?
good, man. Everything's good.
I know we have a different time schedule.
Yeah, it's a little bit different.
Yeah, but yeah, nevertheless, welcome to OTM Enhancements podcast. I hope me and you will have a very, very productive conversation.
Yeah, very much. Yeah.
Yeah, we start wasting so much time. Can you just please introduce yourself to the listener and the viewer?
Yeah, I am Rod Underwood, professional coach. Been coaching, played professionally, coached professionally in the U.S. and internationally a little bit. Have my U.S. coaching license, my U.S. soccer A license. Um, I also coach in the Caribbean, coach in Trinidad, coach in Jamaica, uh, as well as have a master's degree in sports leadership and working on a PhD in sports leadership.
Quick, yeah, that's nice. What a quick and sharp introduction. So hence today, I said our conversation is all about gonna be about the impact of neuroscience in coaching and leadership, and hence you try to explain yourself that you're holding a master's degree in leadership. So can you just try to dive a little bit about the role of neuroscience in coaching?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's for me, it's like I really got involved in thinking about neuroscience. I read a book called The Art of the Impossible by an author called Stephen Coulter. And that really what got me super interested. And it was dealing with how um, individual elite athletes, especially like in what we would call in very high level athletics, such as uh, snowboarding, uh, the types of skateboarding, and all these different sports. And what he found is that how how were these athletes almost every time they went out creating um, new records, right? They were creating new records every time they went out. So he started studying them, and he started studying the neuroscience. And I mean, obviously, I don't want to get into the science of neuroscience because it's interesting, but it's very detailed. So I'll keep it really, really surface. And I mean, so if we start looking at like leadership first, right? When you combine leadership and neuroscience, right? You talk about certain types of leadership, talk about transformative leadership, you talk about servant leadership. These are two types of leadership that connect individuals, that create a stable environment, that create trust, that create honesty, that create autonomy. These are things that happen in those sorts of leadership. And then when you add in the neuroscience of it, and the neuroscience basically is how the brain and all the nerves and everything in the body work together. So, how does leadership impact those systems in the body? And something that we found out like is with when you combine neuroscience and leadership, you have exponential learning. What does that mean? That means that you don't have these small increments of learning, right? You have where a player might be, let's just use some very basic terminology, like a player might be, working at a C level. And over the course, combining obviously the technical, the tactical, the leadership style, plus the neuroscience, you might have, you might go from a C to an F level. So if we go from the alphabet, right, from A to Z, you see these jumps. You don't see a basic A, B, C, D of the pathway of the player moving. You see this pathway of going from a very basic level to intermediate level, and not from and then to an advanced level. So it helps with exponential learning. But why does it help with exponential learning? It creates what we call knowledge stability. So when you take training and you take a youth player and you say, okay, we're going to work on this reception, ball reception. We're going to work on this turn. And so you do repetitive, right? But you need to put that and always in a live environment that the chaos of the game, use the modern terminology, the chaos of the game. So all these different decisions coming from all these different, now you have to make the decisions that affects the physical, that affects the brain and affects the body, right? A player might get anxiety because of all these different uh, ideas and decisions coming. So when you add leadership in neuroscience, it helps to create what we would call um, rapid decision making. So you can make faster, you can make decisions quicker. And that goes back to the point we're talking about this, not just having this gradual learning, but this exponential learning. So that's the basics of how it works.
Top, coach. So now, hence, I want us to touch more about the leadership. Like, hence, we are team sports coaches, where you find out, okay, in the technical team, we have about maybe a bigger staff. So how can we use neuroscience or emotions to connect the members of the technical team, so that we are like-minded, we all see the same things?
Yeah, and that's a great question, because what what has to happen here is we talk about leading a big staff, right? And how do we connect? Because everyone comes with different education levels, everyone comes with different experience, everyone comes with different cultural experiences. We have to keep that in mind. Everyone comes with, in the modern game, everyone comes with a different first language, right? So all these things affect how we connect together. So as a leader, the first and foremost, the number one thing that you have to do is connect with the people that you're leading. Find out who they are, what's important to them, how they learn, how do you talk to them. All these things, you have to learn as much as you can about these individuals. Then as a leader, once you know as much as you can about all these individuals, now we have to get the group to start to learn about each other. And when the group learns about each other, because we're here for a common goal, right? At the professional level, we're here for a common goal, to win championships, right? That's what, when you're talking about professional football, talking about we're here to win championships, to win trophies. So if that's our goal, how do we get there? By being, also, we're being so diverse and from so many different ways. So transformational leadership and servant leadership are the two types of leadership today that most impact young players in the modern game. Why is that? Because transformational leadership moves a player to a place of comfort, to who's willing to risk failing, who's willing to risk to get to that next level. Whereas servant leadership as well comes alongside, and it says, you and I might be the coach and you might be the player, but I'm going to walk alongside of you. I'm not going to walk ahead of you. Sometimes I might walk behind you. Sometimes I might pick up your bag and say, hey, I'll take that for you. You show that they have value and that they really are important as human beings and as individuals. And when you develop this core value, these core foundational principles, then you can talk about tactics. Then you can talk about how we're going to win this trophy. Then we can talk about what's the training session going to be about tomorrow. But until you have that foundation, you can talk about those things, but you can have incremental learning.
So what's the first step, Coach Rod? Like, what's the first step can I take as a head coach to instill this connection, this emotional connection with the technical team plus the players in the team?
Well, yeah, right. That's a great question, because you start with the coach. So something that I really talk about a lot is, so I'm gonna digress just a little bit and go a different direction. So we look at modern football, right? We look at Pep Guardiola and what he's done over the last 10 or 15 years with football. He's changed football and how football was played, right? Everybody wanted to keep the ball at all costs. Everybody wanted to emulate or to replicate what he did. But there's a difference. The difference was, it was in his DNA. It was who he was. It was everything about what he was about. It's like it was part of his human being. But then you had individual coaches that mimicked and tried to replicate it, but didn't necessarily believe in it to the depth that he did. So if you look at it, even they would say, "Well, here comes this coach that he knows what peps. He understands peps. He can create those." But when you have something that's deep inside and it's really valuable, you can think in a way that other people can't think. So let's go back to the leadership. A coach must first believe in servant leadership and transformational leadership. And they must be adaptive and they must be flexible, because every single person is not the same. Because what neuroscience tells us is learning, it's not a straight line, it's not linear. What learning is, it's up, down, around. So once we understand that idea of it, then the coach, then the leader can connect with all the technical staff and the players in the way they need to be connected. But that takes work. And that takes that you have to believe, you have to honestly believe this is the way to go forward. This is the pathway to create connection, to create opportunities to exponentially improve our tactics, exponentially improve our technique, exponentially increase connection throughout the whole collective, meaning players, front office, technical staff, everybody. Once you get to that place, then the coach must model those behaviors every day. So as a parent, my kids always look at me and say, "You said that, but you did this," right? So it's the same thing as coaches and technical staff. The technical staff might say, "Well, you told me this, but you're acting this way." It's doesn't help you make that mesh. So it has to start from a place of, "I really believe this. I really believe this. I really truly am committed to this."
Wow, that's that's really interesting, Coach Rod, because now I want us to dive even more deeper, because you find a situation whereby the players come from different cultural background. Let's say maybe they were used to be trained in a certain way, and me as a head coach, I come with a different style, with a different way of doing things. So how can I try to instill? I heard you speaking about that every player, not every player is different, and every movement is different. So in this situation, how can I really try to instill the idea, how to instill the play philosophy, so that the decision can be automatic in the players?
Right, right. So again, it comes back to leadership, right? Leadership is the anchor that ensures knowledge doesn't just go in one ear and come out the other. So I might see a player coming from Northern Europe, and then I might have a player that's coming from South America, where in South America, right, it's very physical, can be very physical, it can be very difficult, and there's no harm that's meant by it. And there might be a lot of friction within the training, but it's not a friction that's a negative friction a lot of times. It's a friction that is, we're just competitive. And then you take, and that might be totally different from the Northern European, for instance. So I have to understand that, but we have to have a common goal. And what's our common goal? Our common goal, the coach has to set the philosophy, set the playing style, and then the coach must train that. And once the coach trains that and the players feel that, like a lot of my players tell me, it's like, "We love your football because it makes us feel good. It makes us really enjoy training. It helps us to really enjoy the match." And I think that's really important. So you have to, again, look at all these different things. But when you create what I call knowledge stability, talking about the playing style, talking about the coaching philosophy, continuing that over and over again, getting it different ways to different individuals, which creates cultural growth. And when you have cultural growth, we're coming together to unify, which allows us to then find ourselves moving on the same pathway. And we have a shared vision. Our shared vision is win trophies. Our shared vision has to align players and staff in a clear style for long-term sustainable purposes.
Okay, and now I want us to use neuroscience for session design. What I'm trying to say here is when we're trying to create the I'm trying to find the right way when we're trying to stimulate the right part of the brain that will assimilate or will make the players to feel good during the session. So I want you to dive more into how can I use neuroscience to design a good training session that the players will say, okay, they will feel good, they will stimulate the right emotions, and I said, okay, when the emotions are well, the players they store the information so easily.
Right, that's a great point, right? So one thing we have to be really careful about is what we call cognitive load management. Cognitive means just the brain studying information, decision making, things coming from all these different ways. But we need to structure the training session to prevent decision fatigue. So in other words, we have to make sure we don't give too many decisions that ultimately we can call that it freezes the player from making decisions. But we also have to touch into like the resilience training, right? Helping them become more resilient. So, and way to do that is mental rehearsal. Thinking about it beforehand, looking at it beforehand, uh, preparing the players for the high performance environment. And all this ties into what's called neuroplasticity, which means the brain is able to expand and change and adapt. And the brain is able to change and adapt. The cognitive load can continue to go up without causing um, cognitive fatigue, which increases resilience training, which therefore answers your question: how do we get players moving in all the same direction?
So, what's the difference between cognitive load and cognitive appraisal?
And cognitive what?
Appraisal,
Application?
appraisal.
I still didn't hear the last word.
Oh, what I'm trying to say, like, okay, I can say cognitive load and cognitive evaluation. So when the
Evaluation.
player,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Evaluation. Okay. So
cognitive load and cognitive evaluation.
cognitive evaluation, right? So basically, evaluation means to learn and to look at and see where an individual is. And so then you say cognitive, where they are in their thinking, right? And so you evaluate them. So what we need to do as a coaching staff, right? We need to have one-on-one meetings with players and have conversation to find out where they're, to cognitively evaluate them by having conversation, but also looking at them to see, are they making the decisions close to and consistently the way that we perceive it. But also what helps is data, right? Data helps. Data helps us to paint a picture, right? If we're saying we want our striker, our number 9, to really convert one out of 2, 1 out of 3 um, big chances per game. Let's just use that as an example. So we need to train that, and we train that, and we can evaluate that. We can give that player 7 to 10 big chances per training session, and if they are scoring 8 to 10 under game situation, then we can evaluate and say their cognitive load, they're learning, right? But we don't want to give them want to give them too many where they go to cognitive fatigue, because then they start to have a negative view of themselves. Wow, they're giving me 20 and I'm only getting 2. So these are ways to set up to hopefully create success.
So, Coach Rod, I'm just gonna come and say, I'm just gonna be creative, come with a question here, whereby, okay, we are in a situation here, we are in a playoff setup. Let's say we are competing to get into the, let's say, the Premier League side, right? So we have two games. We play home and away. So we are playing home, and at home we lose 4-0. At home we lose 4-0, and we're gonna still have to go and play away next week. So and then we have to score. We have to score more, which means we have to score five or we have to score four. It's draw, and we go to penalties. So in this situation, how can we use neuroscience or leadership to encourage the players to 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 not give up, for the players to bring their A game in our next game? That okay, we are trailing uh, 4-0. So how can we use leadership skills or the neuroscience to like to overcome or to thrive over this kind of a situation?
Yeah, so I think that goes back to what we talked about earlier. It goes back to the preparation, right? It goes back to our resilience training. It goes back to our cognitive load management. It goes back to our neuroplasticity, meaning that if we set the foundation, if we set the players and help the players become resilient, we have kept the players away from cognitive, decision fatigue. But we've put them in an environment where their brain is consistently building new ways to make decisions, new pathways. They're adaptable, they're flexible. When we come to difficulties like this, we can stay the course in terms of what our philosophy is. Now, will we have to go chase the game a little bit? Of course we will. If it's a knockout competition and we don't want to be knocked out and we need at least 4 goals to continue on, then there might be some adjustments, right? There might be some player adjustment. There might be some uh, how we set the team up, and how we start the game. So all those things, right? But if we built a foundation on resilience training, players being flexible, being adaptable, but also creating autonomy. Autonomy means they feel free to make the right decisions in the right moments in the match. We still give ourselves a chance to at least come back 4-4. But again, it comes from the coach. What energy? You play that game on Saturday, and now you have a training on Monday. What energy is that player, the coach, giving to the team on Monday? Is it an energy of, oh, this is going to be really very difficult, I don't think we can do it? Or is it an energy of, hey, I believe in you? Think about our resilience training, reminding them. So we're embedding the knowledge that we've talked about all year. Think about, we keep adding this knowledge, we keep compounding and compounding this knowledge, that when we face challenges like that, you may not overcome that barrier of getting those 4 goals. You might get knocked out, but you have to think long term. Did I improve the player's confidence? Did I improve the player's flexibility? Did I improve the player adaptable to difficult, making the player adaptable with situations? Did I help the player become more resilient, even though they're facing a 4-0 deficit? They worked as hard as they would if they knew they were going to move on to the next round. So it has to be, again, it starts from the coach. What energy? What information is being provided? Because there can also be information overload, especially like when we talk about data, right? There's thousands of data points that you could look at to say why we lost 4-0. But you have to find the right data to provide to the right player at the right time to help improve. So you don't want to give too much. So again, we're really doing the work already. We've done the work already up to this point. Now it's emphasizing we're good enough, emphasizing this is how we can do it, emphasizing we need to be adaptable, improvising, emphasizing that we need to be flexible. If we create those things, right, and then we put it on the pitch in training sessions, right? For example, we gave up 3 of those 4 goals were inside the box. So we need to train as such to reduce the box entries of our opponent. So if we reduce the box entries of our opponent, then we can nullify that danger that they had. Or if they scored on two corners, right? And we go look at the setup and say, okay, we gotta adjust this, and we've got to make sure that we don't let this happen again. So it is a combination: leadership, neuroscience, technical, tactical, psychological, physical. You put all those components together and say, let's go out and give our best effort to get at least 4 goals.
Okay, good. I just wanted to go a bit back where we speak about cognitive load. Like, what's the right way to train the player, like to not overload the player cognitively? So I want you to touch, like, how can we like, what's the right way to train the players that they are not over fatigued? What's like the right way? Like, okay, now we are training the cognitive load here. We are trying, there's a short and long term memory, right? So my question is, like, how can we help the players to take the short term memory to go and store it in the long memory?
Right. So you don't want to. So there's a lot of fatigues, right? There's mental fatigue. There's social fatigue. There is physical fatigue. So you have to take all these in consideration. So how do we train? So basically, periodization, right? I'm sure you've heard that terminology, periodization. So what people get misconstrued about periodization is that we can do physical periodization, we can do mental periodization, we can do tactical periodization, we can do technical periodization. No, periodization means we do everything all the time. So we work on we work on the collective, we work on the whole. Now we do take pieces out and work on those in phases of the game, or we work individually with individual players who we need to improve in certain areas. But collectively as the group, we typically work on everything: the technical, the tactical, the physical, the psychological, the leadership component, the neuroscience component, in every single training session. And we might say, okay, it is match day +2, right? Just, use that terminology. If we use that terminology, we can say, okay, our leadership needs, if we're talking about our training session at 100%, maybe our leadership focus needs to be 45%, right? Our physical needs to be only 10%. So we can then divide that training session. We say at 100%, each of those areas have a specific percentage. And if the training session is an hour and a half, then we can say we've got 90 minutes. And within that 90 minutes, we want to say 5% on physical today. That's going to be our emphasis of that. So, but it's going to be mostly a mental training and a technical tactical training with a lot of leadership involved. So if you understand that periodization and you go from 100% and you give each area an importance on that particular day, then as the coach, you lead those things. As a staff, you have the staff lead those things.
Yeah, that was a great answer, coach. So now, I'm a coach here. I'm facing a situation whereby, okay, my player is being out with an injury. Let's make, for example, an ACL injury that takes about 9 months to 12 months. So how can I stimulate the mental side, the emotional side of the player to come back?
Well, I think that comes back to your earlier question about the technical staff. So when you, again, when you talk about staff, you can't have silos or departments. In a sense, you have the medical staff, you have the medical department, you have the technical staff, but we have to understand the interconnectedness of each group. So the trainers, the physio, the goalkeeper coach, the therapist, we don't function some over here, some over there, some over here. We function as a collective. So for me, I'm going to go to the mental coach and say, hey, X player is really struggling with their recovery mentally. I think you need to spend a little more time with that person. Now, me as a coach, I might say, hey, I have a good relationship with that player. Hey, I'm going to take that player out for a lunch just to connect with them, to let them know that they're still important to the group. But at the same time, I'm going to let the expert, the mental coach, the psychologist, sports psychologist, and the therapist and the physio do their jobs. But as the leader, I'm going to make sure that I'm talking to each of those individuals, telling them what I see with that player without telling them what to do. And so therefore, again, it's not just the coach, because what goes wrong in the modern game is, and that's why you see coaches get fired so much, the coach is the expert. The coach should have all the answers. That's not true. The coach is only an expert in certain areas. They might know a lot about things, but they're only experts in certain areas. So therefore, you have to rely on your other experts within your staff, because that's why you're hired. That's why you hire people to do a job that they're better doing than you can do.
Top. That's a that's a top answer, coach. So we finding in a team, because mostly you find that older players, they are mostly reluctant because of maybe their history in the game, or maybe their longevity. They've been in the game and they meet a coach whereby the coach is coming with modern ideas. You find that the older players, the so-called senior players in the team, they are so reluctant to the ways of training. So how can me, let's say in this season, I'm the head coach. How can I, as a head coach, use my leadership skills to convince the player that, okay, even this, you have never trained this way, but still this is the right way to train.
Well, you have to give the players a voice, right? Especially with senior players, because here's the reality. Imagine being in a team where you're coaching a Ballon d'Or winner, you're coaching a World Cup winner, and they play for some of the biggest clubs in the world. How are you going to coach that player? It's out of respect that you coach that player, that their voice and their experiences can contribute to what the team does. Now, some people are going to say, wait a second. No, that's what you need, because when you get the right players to buy into what you're doing, it changes everything. Because here's the thing, what I've noticed, you can have individuals that wear the captain orange band, they're a captain, but then you have leaders who have control, not control, who have the respect of the entire locker room, who's an extension of the coach. And they really keep the coach away from a lot of things that never really need to happen. So you need to make sure that you get these players on your side. And I don't mean in a conniving way, but in a way that you're showing them respect, that you believe in them, that you respect what they've done. You believe they have something great to offer. Their knowledge is their knowledge and their nuance is really important, that you want to understand that. And so again, it comes back to, what is my connection to that player? Am I just a connection to that senior player as a coach? Or am I a connection to that player as a mentor, as a someone who they can confide in? If I get those right, the tactics will come and their buy-in will come, because it's out of respect. And it doesn't necessarily have to be 100% buy-in, but they will show that I respect what you're saying, and I'm going to give everything I have to go on the path with the group. And that's really what's most important.
So I will just say, okay, Coach Rod, given an advice here to a coach who's listening to this, who's watching or listening to this conversation, what's the best way for players buy-in?
Best way for players buy-in? There's no one best way, because what did we say earlier, right? We said we have to take consideration experience, culture, language, because there's little things that you understand. Like if you some when I really started dealing with really international players and big international diverse groups within a team, in America, it's important that I shake someone's hand and I look you right in the eye when we're introduced. In some cultures, it's disrespectful to look at your senior or the person that's your leader in the eye and give them a strong handshake. So it's really very different. There's no one way that you can say what's the best way to buy in. The best way to buy in, get players to buy in, is to be authentic. It's to be real, to be vulnerable with the players. Say, you know what? I'm not sure I have the answer. To be authentic, showing that you really believe and you really live the life that you say you live. Being authentic is critical because players can see through you. Especially big players. They've had a lot of different experience with a lot of different players and coaches. They can see through. And also, like in America, what's unique in America is that it's a very educated society. You deal with players that have high, advanced degrees. And so they're very smart people. So you can't really try to lie to them and tell them something. They'll find you out. So being authentic is paramount. That's really what's important. Then you can get the buy-in.
So in a situation whereby in a lot of times, but okay, we we have laid out the game plan, the game idea, and you can see, like Hansi said, like as a coach, you can see that emotionally the players are not connecting. Emotionally, the players are not connecting. In these situations, I want you to, as a leadership coach, you can see that like it's not about tactics, but it's just about the mentality of the player. They are not approaching the situation from a mental stand of view. So now we're in the change in the locker room. It's in halftime. So how can you stimulate and how can you encourage the players to connect with the ideas with your ideas as a coach?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to the beginning that we said it's important that you know the players. It's important that you know what stimulates the players. You understand what motivates the players. Understand what causes anxiety to the player. So I think what you're starting to see in this conversation is that there must be a real, true connection with individuals. Because most of us aren't going to be like the big teams where this player doesn't work, I have enough money just to find another player. That doesn't, we don't, most of us don't have that luxury, right? Most of us, we got what we got. We might have the opportunity to change one or two players, three players, but generally we're not, don't have to. So it goes back to, have I connected and do I understand that player? And does that player understand me? And it also goes to the point of shared vision. We have to bring the players back to what was our shared vision? What was the goal of when we started the season? What's the shared vision? What's the pathway? Once we can get individuals back on the same pathway, the mental connectivity will come. But if you have all of us going on the one pathway and we come to five different directions to go and you got a few here, a few there, a few here, a few there, we're going to not have success. So if we can see that it's players are mentally going off in different directions, we bring that back through our ultimate connection and reminding players of, I use the word embedding knowledge over and over again, bring the players back to our shared goal of that embedded knowledge of creating knowledge stability within the group that we understand and that we've all bought into this idea. Then we can reconnect mentally.
Top. That was top, coach. That was definitely top. So, as a coach, I once found myself in a situation whereby uh, all the players we are aligning to one idea emotionally. So we have a belief that we can do this, we can win this. But there's one player in the was one player in the team whereby he was not buying into the idea. Emotion, like mentally, he was not at the same state as us collectively as a team. And in that situation, I just wanted you to like maybe if I was wrong to deal with that player in that way, please tell me that I was wrong. But if I was right, also you can also tell me. So, but for me, for the benefit of the team, I chose to cut that player that was not believing in what we were building. Like he didn't have the right emotions. He was not showing the right emotions in that situation. So I decided to cut the player. So in this moment, I'm trying to ask like, what was the best way, like using leadership skills to deal with the situation?
Well, good question. Well, I mean, I think you have to have conversation with the player. Ask them why they are, because I believe every player has a voice and every voice is important within the group. So you have to ask the player, why do I see this happening? Can you explain to me why you're not so connected to the group or not buying into the ideas as much as everyone else? Hear what they have to say, speak to them, try to get them back on the page and move with the rest of the group. But you can't overspend energy to the point of it causes friction and divisiveness within the group. So there you will have a limit before you say, okay, this player's just not going to come around and we need to move on. But it's always fair to have a conversation first and ask the player why and have them, because they might say, I don't understand. That's why I'm not bought in. And you might have thought they understood. It could be that simple, right? Or it could be they can say, I don't like all these players. I don't like the club. I don't want to be here. And then there's your answer too, right?
Okay, yeah. So the other thing, this is gonna be our last question in this conversation, whereby you find ourselves like from my previous question that I recently asked, whereby you 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 sit down with the player, or you talk with the player, but the player he's not. You speak about authenticity, like he's not authentic. He's not try. He's not try. He's not the one else. Even though I sit down with him and say, okay, what's wrong? He's like, oh, like maybe he tries to point some points and say, okay, this is wrong, and then we try to fix those elements that they're affecting the system, but still the player doesn't come to the party. So in that instant, like he's not honest. He doesn't say, okay, I don't want to play here. I don't want to be here. But he's not honest. So in that situation, what would be the best solution to solve the problem that the player and the coach they're facing?
So if I'm hearing the question right, you're saying the player said they don't want to be there.
Yes.
So if the player doesn't want to be there, I mean, all of us as coaches take that, well, we need to figure out. It's always good again to ask the question, why don't you want to be there? Because the player might feel alienated, the player might feel disrespected. And so we might be able to solve that problem. But if the player says I'm going to be there and you say, see you later, I'm not sure you're doing the I'm not sure you're doing the player justice or the club justice by making that decision as such. I think it's always important to have a conversation. But if it ultimately comes to the player doesn't want to be there, then it's time to move on.
Okay. Okay. That was that was top, coach Gerard. So but yeah, thank you for your time and coming to join me in this conversation. That it was a very interesting conversation. I really enjoyed, coach. Thank you for your time.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me on.
Yes, I think even next time when I come, say, Coach Rod, come and let's have a leadership skills conversation. Then yeah, you'll be available.
Okay, great.
Yes. enjoy the rest of the day of your day. We have a time difference. Me,
Yeah.
I'm about to go. Me, I'm about to go to sleep. You is still in the noonday.
Yeah. It's just middle of the day for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cheers. Thank you.
You're welcome.